case, my requester was the same person that was my buyer, just for the demonstration purposes. So some of you did this yesterday as buyers, but wanted to we'll walk through it again today of where you set up your pagelets so that you can see requisitions that have been approved. So you click on the content link, and there's really two pagelets that have been set up for requisitions that have been approved. And I'm going to put both of them on here. You'll decide which one you want to use, but I'm going to select the eProRecs to be sourced and the eProRecs multi-origins pagelets, and then I'm going to click on my personalized layout, and I'm going to go from 2 columns to 3 columns. And this is basically just changing my home page, and I'm going to take the first pagelet and move it over to the right column, and take the second pagelet and move it over to the right column as well. And this is just because I don't want my pagelets to be underneath the news and announcements or underneath the menu on my home page. I'll go ahead and just save that. And so what that does is basically, again, a pagelet is a query that's running each time you come back to your home page, and each time you log in, it'll refresh this page. If you're in PeopleSoft a lot during the day and you want to refresh your pagelet, then you click on the refresh button, and it'll go out and run the query and bring back your results. So the first thing you'll do is there's the 2 pagelets come up, and there's one called eProRecs multi-origins. So let's say that you're a buyer and you're only going to be sourcing requisitions for a few origins. Then you might want to use this multi-origins because you can define the specific origins that you're looking for. So if I click on, sometimes you can click on this Customize Pagelet link when it first comes up, or the second button that says Customize. And on this page, you'll basically define the criteria as you would as if you were running a query. You'll put in your business unit, and you'll put in specific origins. So if you were in Quick Start, for example, you might put in 41500, and you want to see origin 050, 050, 051, 052, 053, for example, right? Or if you're in an agency and you want to see all origins, then you can just put in your business unit and leave the wild card or like origin % in there, and that'll run the query or run the pagelet for all the origins. So this multi-origins one is really our most commonly used one. You can use the other pagelet if you are going to be the buyer for all origins. Then you just go into that one and set it up for all origins. You also have the options down at personalized thresholds. For example, you could set up a threshold, and this is where you can make highlights. For example, if I wanted to say, if the budget status is equal to V, then I want it to be I want the entire row to be highlighted in green. And I can add additional criteria. So you could come in and say, all right, I can say budget status equal to error or not checked, then I can make it red. So it's just kind of a way to highlight things on your pagelet so that they're easier to identify. And you can pick any of the fields that are in the results. For example, an origin, if you've got a specific origin that you want to have a specific color. So you just click that and click Save. And then that'll run the pagelet and bring it up. So this will show you that because it's a valid budget status, it's highlighted green, and this pagelet basically shows me every rec that is in an approved status that has not been sourced. So once I take this requisition and source it to a purchase order, it should come off this pagelet. If I do a partial sourcing, sometimes we've had that happen before, where maybe the rec's got 100 items on it, and you end up only sourcing 99 of them, and there's still one left over. It'll still show on this page, and you would need to. There's a finalize button on the purchase order where you basically say, I'm not going to source that quantity that's remaining. Okay, so if you see something on your pagelet that you think you've already sourced, then we can help you figure out why that's still showing up on there and help you basically close out that requisition. Okay. So I've got this requisition, and I want to take this requisition that's come up on my pagelet, and I want to take the rec, and I'm just going to copy the rec ID and come out underneath purchasing, purchase orders, stage source request, and then click on requisition selection. So on requisition selection, I can paste in the requisition ID, or I can do search for specific origins and do a search. We recommend that you put in the requisition ID. Depending on your volume, it's going to show up down here. If you left everything blank and did a search, it's going to bring out all requisition lines that are currently approved for your entire business unit. So the search might take a while, so we recommend that you put the requisition ID in this field and then click on search. So that brings up the two lines for my fencing that I want to turn into a purchase order. Okay, the two lines. One thing, and so there may be on this page some things come in. For example, if it was a Staples or an Office Max order, you'll notice that the vendor will be right here, and the vendor location is EDX. So that means that the order was ordered from the catalog. It's a catalog item. Okay, and that means, and that vendor order location the supplier will be in there, and that supplier will be grayed out, and the location will be grayed out. Okay, we have had problems in the past with some of the with some of the requesters. They'll go out and do an Office Max order, and the rec will come over, and then they go to that requisition defaults page, and they'll change the vendor location from EDX to 0001. And then that purchase order is not going to go electronically back to the supplier because the dispatch method would be print, for example. Okay, so basically they shouldn't change the vendor or the location on items that were ordered from the online catalogs. I had a question yesterday about what if the P card was used on the requisition. So there's a spot for them to choose the drop down of the P card on there. Some agencies are using that, some are not. If the P card was used, you'll see the last 5 digits of the P card right here underneath the procurement card. So for example, the P card was not used on these two lines, so that's why it just says procurement card. So one of the things, and we did have a question about this yesterday, so when you're on this requisition selection page, if you had not put in your requisition ID and just done an open search, you may see, for example, lines from multiple recs to the same supplier. If you click all of those lines at one time and click Save, if the vendor matches and the location match and the P card used match, then it will consolidate those rec lines onto one PO. Okay, so that's why we recommend that you source by individual requisition if you want one rec per PO. But if you want to combine requisitions, if they have the same vendor, same location, and the same payment method, meaning P card, the same P card number, and you select both of those requisition or multiple requisition lines at one time and hit Save, then it'll build those all as one. We have had people come in here, and even for like a rec that they want on one PO, if they'll include this line, and then they'll hit Save, and then they'll click the second line and hit Save. Well, that's going to create two separate purchase orders when you do that. But if you click them, if you include both of them and hit Save, then it's going to create one purchase order. Okay, so as the buyer, you're driving how your purchase orders get created as far as consolidating lines or not consolidating lines. So from this page, you have this information. You can, if you want to do the, where you have to go into a PO, and you're used to doing this on your POs, going in and setting them to agency contract or statewide contract or open market purchase or making changes to the requisition, you can just save this page and make your changes over on your purchase order, or you can click on this staging information and go ahead and modify, for example, the header details. You could come in and modify this, and I know that this is going to be an open market purchase, and select it here, or you can just wait until the purchase order gets created to make that change. Also, if you have, if you know that the budgetary chart fields are not correct for these particular lines, or you wanted to go to an individual line, you could scroll to that line and make the changes to the budget as well when the purchase order gets created. Okay. The only thing about this page is you don't have the capability of course, using speed charts or anything like that on here. And also, if we wouldn't recommend you splitting distributions from this page as well. You should do that over on the purchase order side. So once you're okay, you basically just click on Save. And what happens now is you'll notice if I search for this requisition, it no longer comes up. If I go back to my home page, and it's still there right now, but if I click on the refresh, it takes it off the pagelet, because now this rec is sitting out in some staging tables for the auto sourcing process to take the requisition and create a purchase order. Okay, so the auto sourcing process runs at 15 minutes and 45 minutes after each hour, so it runs every half hour. So that's the longest you should have to wait for a PO to get created. The purchase orders get built in an open status. So if I come out, and we're not going to run the process and have you wait on that right now, but if I am a buyer, I can come to my purchase orders, purchasing purchase orders, and under Add Update POs that you're familiar with now, you can do Find an Existing Value. And if you want to look for all of your POs in an open status, you can click on Open. And something that I like to do is save this search criteria. So I can say, I can put in the Save Search, click on that button, click Open POs, and save it. And then I've got it as a drop down. And I could do that same thing if I wanted to see approved POs. I could save a search criteria for that. And so now I can just use the drop down and it'll run my search. And it would bring up a list of all of the POs that are sitting out in an open status. So once your requisition gets created, once your purchase order gets created, and this is from a rec that I did earlier today, but you would basically, all of you are familiar with the purchase order that gets created, and I know we went through some of this in the core teams and during the training, but your PO gets created in an open status. Some of the differences that you'll see is you'll have this requisition link where you can click on it and see the requester information that comes in. If it is a statewide contract purchase, you'll notice that the dispatch method is EDX, meaning it's going to be electronically dispatched out to the supplier. You'll, of course, still come on the header details. And if you did not modify the PO type on the staging tables where I showed you before, this PO type will say GEN, which that's general. You're not going to use that, so you'll change it to the correct PO type and come in and modify that. So this, of course, is an open market purchase, or depending on what PO type is needed, you'll make the modifications. And then, of course, you'll set the PO to, once you've made your changes, you could, of course, modify the category code for the item if it's not correct, or use the PO defaults to modify the budget chart fields, if that's how your business unit's going to work. Okay. So again, we have not modified anything on the approval process of purchase orders, or how POs are worked besides the electronic dispatching. Okay, so if you have a purchase off of a statewide contract, once the PO is approved and valid budget status, then we have an electronic dispatch process that'll take the purchase order and electronically send it to the supplier. And again, you'll get an email confirmation as a buyer when your PO goes out to the supplier. So are there any questions around purchase orders? Donna, if you need to add origin codes, yes. I mean, there are some agencies with multiple origin codes, a lot more than that. We have to go through, we have to get an origin added. SAO actually adds the origin. Then we have to make sure that security is set up on the origins as far as how the approval routing works for the origin, and then what requesters get access to that particular origin code. If lines are consolidated from multiple requisitions, are different budgets charged independently? Well, all of your budgets are charged on the individual distribution line level. So, I mean, you could take requisitions and combine them. They're going to take the budget chart fields that whatever was on the rec, and then you could override them on individual lines on the purchase order. But yeah, so you could have a PO that has multiple fund sources or multiple chart fields on them. Ella had the question, are we allowed to change the information or add to the reference field? You are allowed to change the information on non-statewide contracted items. The items that are on contract, the descriptions and the pricing will be grayed out because that all came from the catalog, but you are allowed to change the descriptions and pricing information on non-catalog items. Oh, and there was a question about the PO reference. This has come up before. The PO reference used to be where you put in the statewide contract number. That is now on the contract tab. So on the lines, each of your statewide contracted items will be linked to the individual contract that's against. If you're doing a purchase order for an agency contract, then you will link your agency contracts to your lines to your agency contracts. So a lot of you went through the supplier contracts management training and where you can put in your agency contract. So you'll be expected. So if you have a PO type of an agency contract, then you should have that PO linked to the contract in PeopleSoft. So if you need help with the how to get your agency contracts in, there's some quick reference guides for those out on the DOAS website, how to walk through adding an agency contract. So read those first, and then if you've got questions about them, of course, you can bring those up when we do our daily calls. But go ahead and use those quick reference guides. Again, I mean, we've been live with the ePro piece of this for 5 years, and been putting in a lot of agency contracts that were, you know, a lot of the agencies are actually, you're required to link your purchase orders to your agency contracts and have your agency contracts uploaded into the system. So one of the questions Sonia was saying, we had issues yesterday changing the budget chart fields. You'll need to send me that specific example of what happened. I'm not exactly sure what you meant by issues. I'll need to know what the issue is, and we can take a look at what might have happened on that. If you increase if you did a requisition distribution line for $100 and then you try to do $150, you try to go more than the distribution line, you might have gotten an error message. But you can put, if you needed additional funds put on, then you would do it as an additional distribution line, not modifying what the rec distribution line is. And I can walk you through that when we talk. Laurel asked a question if agency contracts can cross business units. Yes, there is a link on the, if you go into the quick reference guide and walk through the quick reference guides on creating a contract, there is a link where you go in and define the business units that can issue purchase orders against a contract. So if you want to set up one agency contract, then you can list out the other agencies that can link against that contract. One of the questions someone asked is, will the contract automatically default? Yes, it will for statewide contracted items. So when they go out and order from Office Max, the contract ID will come in and it'll flow through. Now, agency contracts, you'll have to go in as the buyer and link the PO lines to the agency contract on each one of the lines. We got a note, someone wishing us a happy December 12th, 2012 at 12:12. Wow. We made it. Thank you for that. We made it. All right. Are there any other questions related to Team Georgia Marketplace in issuing purchase orders? One of the questions came up was, do I have to click the dispatch button for statewide contracted items? No. So a purchase order for a statewide contract that is a dispatch method of EDX just has to be approved and valid budget status. So you don't have to dispatch EDX POs, but you do have to, if they're non-statewide contract purchases. Are there any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and at this point and stop the recording.